Did you always want to make those juicy and tasty brisket burnt ends? I'm going to show you how to do it. If you want to make a good brisket burnt end, you have to understand where the burnt ends come from. A lot of people think that the brisket burnt ends are made of pork belly. Well, that's what they turned into. But in reality, there were the leftovers when the brisket was cooked. In the shops where they sell their brisket, they cook the whole packer brisket and then slice it up into beautiful slices. But what they're left with is those little ends from the flat pieces that are dried out, turned crunchy, and basically they're no good. They can't sell it as a juicy slice of brisket, so they had to do something with it. And the smart guys that were cooking barbecue thought, what if I just serve it on the counter so when people order it, they can have a little taster of what's coming. And that's how brisket burnt ends started. There were the trimmings, the leftovers that would otherwise get thrown away, and now they serve this as a little taster. Now you might think, wow, that's such a waste. All that stuff that you cut off and then turn into burnt ends, it could have been a beautiful brisket. Well, no, it couldn't have. Because if you take a whole pack of brisket like this, you can clearly see that there is a thick piece and a really thin piece, which means the time that it takes to cook the thick piece, then the time that it takes to cook the thin piece, which means by the time that you got the thick piece cooked, the thin piece is overcooked. It's dried, it's no good anymore. And that's why we make the burnt ends. So let's get started. It all starts by selecting the right brisket. And the right brisket has a lot of intramuscular fat, so that's why I selected this Australian wagyu. It has an F1 grade amount of fat, which means you get a lot of intramuscular fat, but they're not overdoing it. The biggest mistake you can make when selecting a brisket is going for a cheaper brisket with a low amount of intramuscular fat. So normally this is the point where I start trimming the brisket, but this brisket looks really good. Remember, this is going to be a home-style brisket that we're going to be using for burnt ends. If this were a competition, I would trim off all the fat and make it nice and lean. But since I'm cooking it for consumption, I want a bit of fat that's going to protect and shield my brisket from drying out and at the same time add some of that flavor. So it is perfect as it is. Time to put some seasoning on. And a good brisket rub is a balance between salt and pepper. I'm using 1 part fleur de sel, which is a light sea salt, and 1 part ground black pepper. Then I add half a part of onion powder and a 1/4 part of garlic powder. I'm gonna mix that all up and sprinkle it onto my brisket. Now don't be worried about putting too much seasoning on a brisket. This is a thick piece of meat that can use a good amount of seasoning. Just make sure you put that seasoning on all sides of the brisket and get it everywhere. I'm going to be smoking this brisket on the masterbuilt smoker. Now the good thing about this barbecue is that it is a gravity-fed charcoal smoker. This means that I got a chute loaded with charcoal sitting on this side with a fire on the bottom, and smoke is being pumped from that fire into the smoke chamber. Let me show you how that's done. My masterbuilt is up to temperature. We're running at a temperature of 140 degrees Celsius, which is around 280 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'm gonna put my brisket on, straight onto the grill grates. Look at what a giant this is, an absolute beast. It just fits to the barbecue. I'm gonna close the lid and I'm gonna add some smoke wood. I'm gonna open up the ash chamber, and there, in the ash drawer, I'm gonna add some smoke wood. I'm adding beech as a smoke wood because beech is going to give me a light smoke profile on my brisket. So now the embers are dripping down onto the smoke wood, it's creating smoke, so let's close it up and let the barbecue do its job. As you can see, my brisket is picking up the most beautiful color you've ever seen. And it's still juicy, but the tips are starting to dry out. So I'm gonna make a spray. Because I don't want to tweak the flavors too much, I'm starting with 500 milliliters of beef broth. And to that, I'm just gonna add a tablespoon of Mr. Lee Perkins' world famous Worcestershire sauce. All right, time to spray it on. Once I got my brisket looking the way I wanted to, and I'm talking about the smoke color and the crust, then it's time to wrap it up in butcher's paper. 2 layers overlapping is a necessity when wrapping a brisket this big. So of course I gotta stick in my thermometer to make sure I keep an eye on that core temperature, and I'm using the meter thermometer. And then I'm gonna slide it back into my masterbuilt smoker and let it continue to cook. I seasoned this amazing brisket with a good brisket rub. Smoked it for 3 hours, then wrapped it and let it cook for another 3 hours until we reached a core temperature of 94 degrees Celsius. This thing looks absolutely insane. It's a beauty. 3 hours of smoking and spraying at the same time, and followed by a wrap period of another 3 hours, which basically makes this a super fast brisket, cooked at a temperature of 140 degrees Celsius, which is around 280 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that is super fast, 6 hours. However, this still is an insane, juicy, tender brisket. Look, it's flobbly and blubbly. It moves around. Now the tough thing for me is I gotta cut off a piece that I'm gonna consider to be dry compared to the rest of the meat that I'm gonna use for burned ends. I'm looking for these little bits, the chunky bits that sit on the end that are appearing to be drier than the rest. Look, it's a little bit drier. If you see me touch this, it gives way, it's juicy, it's tender, but this part, yeah, not so much. And also a part like this, what's sitting on top, right there, it's had a lot more hot and dry air to endure than the rest of the brisket. But let's be honest, we could eat this brisket as it is. It is amazing, it's insane. And I'm thinking right now, like, why am I making brisket burnt ends? I could just eat this thing. But we're here to make brisket burnt ends. I'm keeping focused on the goal at hand. So let's take off the drier parts. No, the rest is not going to be sliced up. I'm saving this as my brisket. I still want to have some bark on my brisket. If I'm slicing off more burned ends than this, I'm ruining the whole brisket part. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it as it is. I got a good amount of bark, and I got a beautiful thing that I still can slice up as a brisket and serve for my friends and family. I made my brisket magically disappear, and it's time to start cutting these burned ends into cubes. I want finger-sized cubes like they have on the countertops in barbecue shops. So you can just pick one up and stick it in your mouth and enjoy the heck out of it. Now of course, these burned ends need a good brisket sauce. And that starts with 250 milliliters of ketchup, 50 grams of sugar, and then the key ingredients to this sauce, JD's honey whiskey. Around 100 milliliters will do the job. 25 milliliters of Worcester sauce, a tablespoon of the brisket rub that we just made, and then finish it off with 25 milliliters of red wine raspberry vinegar. Once the sauce gets a beautiful syrupy bubble, it's time to start pouring it all over those burned ends. Once they're all sauced up, I'm going to slide it back into the barbecue and let it sit there for around 10 minutes or until my burned ends get sticky. There we go. Aren't they gorgeous? Look at them. So good looking. I think I never made them this good looking. This is like next level. You had to get the biggest one.
I had a little taste before they turned into brisket ends. Man, this is so much better. That sauce is amazing. Salty, sweet, melt in your mouth.
Just imagine being in that barbecue shop and taking one of these off the counter. It's gonna blow your mind, you're gonna get even more hungry, and you know they got the right stuff.
If you want to have an amazing summer, make these. Or in spring, or in the end of the winter. Doesn't matter. Just make these and make the sauce.
I think these are awesome brisket burnt ends and the recipe is amazing. It's on pitmasterx.com. You can make this at home.
They should.
And you can make these from leftover brisket as well, or you could just say, hey, let me get a nice piece of chuck, smoke it, and then make brisket burnt end out of this. You don't have to make the whole pack of brisket. You don't have to really. And the worse quality your brisket is, the better these are.
The better these are, yeah.
This is like the golden standard. So if you mess up your brisket, don't throw it away. Never ever do that. Just make burnt ends.
For all those beginners that are like scared of doing their first brisket, maybe scared of screwing it up, doesn't matter. There's always an option B. There's always a plan B.
So how much brisket burnt ends did you make?
And let's just
On
don't
that
talk
note.
numbers. Don't talk numbers. So forget about what he said. Just click on this link. This is also a great video. Amazing video. Amazing. Click it. Click it. Click it. Click it. Thank you for all the patrons and the YouTube members. You guys freaking rock. Hope to see you guys next time. Until then,
Eet smakelijk!
keep on grilling.
That's right.